Alright guys, such a comment again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The bracket for Major 4 has been causing quite some debate. Dashy gives his perspective on the first round matches, saying that there's one in particular that he finds more interesting than many may well believe, especially after recent results in the qualifiers could make FaZe's first round match rather spicy indeed. And if OpTic were to win their first round game and FaZe were to lose, then the bracket seriously opens up for OpTic to potentially make a really deep run in this tournament. Dashy also explains how these whole accusations went down over the last few days, subbing in for Twisty against Zinni and Co and Stallion Scrims. Remember to read your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. A few things to go through. First of all, there is talk about the Black Ops 7 multiplayer, how it's coming on, because here we are towards the end of May. The game is probably expected to launch in, late October. We're talking yesterday about the possibility of doing DreamHack Stockholm, which is at the end of November, maybe as a kickoff event. So, the game needs to come out end of October, ideally, to make that happen. So as it stands, we're not really sure, although there were rumours, and to be fair, maybe understandably, right? Because, again, we're in this weird scenario where the current game we're playing is a Treyarch game, Black Ops 6, and yet the upcoming game is going to be another Treyarch game, Black Ops 7. Now, we thought that it was going to be some sort of like Black Ops 2 remastered type thing, and some of it is. I think a lot of the maps are going to come over, but even then, you can't just press Control-C, Control-V on the map. Like, you've got to remake it. Okay, it might be the same map design, but you've got to remake it for the new game, so it is still effort. But obviously the campaign is like a large part of it as well. So, it's plenty of pieces to the puzzle. But again, we're getting this weird scenario where we've got two games from the same developer effectively in a row. And it seems like Sledgehammer is stepping in. Could be a good thing. I mean, not going to lie, Treyarch used to be the king of the developers. In recent years, Sledgehammer has maybe taken the cake, or is certainly right up there. So I'm not opposed to this. I'm just hoping that the game isn't rushed to such a degree that it isn't as good as it could be, because, you're talking about effectively a Black Ops 2 sequel set between BO2 and BO3 with some sort of advanced movement in there somewhere. It should be a spectacular game, and I'm hoping that it doesn't get ruined just because of timings and Activision effectively and stuff like this. Because it's one of those years where this year I think the game is pretty good. Next year the game may be even better. You want everything to work well, right? Because the thing that still annoys me a lot about, COD in the past is that Black Ops 3 came around when the CWL was first launching, and it was the worst year of the CWL. There weren't really that many tournaments. It was not a great start, especially after what we had in Advanced Warfare. And so it kind of felt like that year and that potential got wasted to some degree, and you don't want to see that happen to this game as well. And also I'm hoping the game launches at a reasonable time, because then we can actually potentially start the season a little bit earlier, right? So yeah, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. This I wanted to show a couple of clips because I think actually Zuma had just started his stream when he walked past me and we were about to go and watch the Spurs game. I actually was going to go and join them a little bit later, but I had a couple of calls I had to take, and by the time I was finished, the game was over, and then they were continuing on their day. But yeah, I did bump into Zuma briefly, and Benji, of course, walking down in Dallas. I actually really like Dallas. I've warmed to it a lot. The first time I was here, I was like, I didn't really get Texas. It was just too big and hectic, and why do I have to drive everywhere and everything's so far away? But I really do get it now, and actually downtown Dallas is quite walkable. It's actually a nice city. But there were a couple of nice clips here. I actually didn't see this. I need to keep my eyes out, obviously. I actually know exactly where they are as well, right here. So I'm not sure how I didn't notice this yesterday anyway. But yeah, there was this sign that they ran into, and it's obviously advertising Major 4 DreamHack Dallas. I always think it's interesting who they choose to put on these graphics, right? Because it's not like it really matters, but it's still pretty cool. You'd think they'd put, Scrappy on there, right? Face of the league. Maybe they'd put Shotzzy on there, face of OpTic or whatever. But no, the front man is Dillon Attach, right? It's actually really cool. Look, obviously he lives in Texas, right? He's on a team that's based out of Texas. But he's not playing, is what he said to this clip. He's like, look, I'm not even playing this weekend's, and yet I'm still right up there on the screen. So, thought that was nice. Look, I don't know what's next, of course, for this team, and also for Cloud9, but that's certainly a relevant discussion of the weekends, because, if you look at these teams, you've got FaZe, potential favourites to win the whole thing. You've got Toronto with JoeDeceives. They've been looking good, but a little bit shaky online over the last couple of weeks. Then you've got Dillon Attach on the bench for the Cloud9 guys, but who knows, maybe they can make a run. Would you bet against a crazy run to be made to try and make it to the World Championship? Probably you would, to be fair. It's pretty unlikely, but you never know. You never know here in the CDL. And until it's over, it's not going to be over. Like, the World Championship qualification was always going to come down to the final tournament of the season. And that's where we are today. Cloud9 could still make it. Minnesota Rocker could still make it. Of course, Falcons are chalked, and they have been for some time. Los Angeles Guerrillas, they can't make it either. But yeah, there are still 3 teams that could make it to champs. And also, seeding is a big deal as well. As we talked about earlier today, if OpTic were to make a serious run, they could well overhaul some of the teams above them in the standings. And that could be pretty useful in terms of World Championship seeding, although I'm sure that OpTic to some degree have kind of accepted the fact that probably they are playing FaZe or Thieves round 1. It's not necessarily guaranteed. If Boston were to get double rounded, then, you know, potentially Ravens get double rounded too. Maybe OpTic could be a part of that if they were to lose to Toronto, then beat Ravens in the loser side. There's a few things that could unfold this weekend, of course. But yeah, some good content as ever with the Falcons guys who returning up to the headquarters over there. But let's talk about what's going to happen this weekend. People are predicting it. Winner of the tournament, biggest flop of the tournament, event MVP, dark horse run. I think on balance, I've got Thieves taking the event. I think it's pretty marginal. Could be between FaZe and Thieves. I'd be surprised if anyone else wins it. I think FaZe, they've looked a little bit better. I mean, we know that it was their hardpoint that was causing them issues. Their hardpoint's made some strides, but it's not exactly been perfect, right? But I think FaZe, like, the thing is with FaZe, if they don't win a tournament, they are almost always, like 99% of the time, they make the finals of the next tournament. Last tournament, they came out top 6. It would be a massive surprise if they're not in the finals, honestly, on Sunday. But if they're in the finals, I feel like, you know, they could fall short. Biggest flop? I mean, it's an interesting question. I guess flop is relevant on expectations, right? Because, you know, maybe you could put Toronto in that category because, you know, they top 3 the last events. Of course, they were expected to do pretty well. I'm not sure that will be the case. Surge as well are another team with big expectations to make it back to a Sunday. So, you know, look, a team like Minnesota Rocker could bomb out top 12 and you could say that they flopped, but, like, did they really? No. Heretics are the other team as well that are kind of in that potential flop category. And look, if OpTic bomb out, I guess that would be considered a flop as well because they should be in a decent position, I suppose. So there's a few candidates for biggest flop of the tournament. Who am I going to go for? Actually kind of difficult to say. I might say, I don't know, I might say Toronto. I'm not sure that at the end of the season, I don't know, they've just confused me the last couple of weeks. And sometimes at the end of the year, they can fall off a little bit. So we'll see. Event MVP, I've gone for winner being Thieves. I'm going to take Scrap. I actually, like, right now it's between Scrap and Cell for the MVP. I'm going to take a Scrap MVP here and secure the MVP of the entire season. And then Dark Horse, you know, I kind of want to say OpTic, right? I kind of do want to say OpTic. I think that this weekend they could make something actually happen. But a couple of clips I wanted to share for you guys. Of course, this was the LA Thieves docuseries that they did on their victory at Major 3. Of course, a bit of a different tournament to what we're going to have here in Dallas in terms of the fans and the crowd and everything. And of course, it's not a massive step for them. They've not won champs yet. That's the goal. Of course, that's mainly the goal for Scrappy, right? Because he needs to get that rig on the board so people will stop criticizing him. And, you know, it's always going to be the case for Scrap in the same way that Dashy had a long while until he got his ring eventually. But Scrap's going to try and get it this year, of course. But speaking of Dashy, he said some really interesting things about the state of this game and also the upcoming tournament. He revealed a bit about how exactly it happened, where he stepped into those Stallions tryouts with Twisty and had, like, the entire team kind of on his side, right? So, like, Twisty was in there, Chelly was in there. Like, he had the whole squad, effectively, helping him go undercover in these matches. And it was pretty cool to hear some of the behind the scenes of that. But he also talked, and the OpTic guys talk about, the bracket as it stands for the Major and predicting what's going to happen in the first round. We also know that the first round would usually happen today, and if you win, you then play again on Saturday. But no, this is no matches today. Today's like setup day and everything, finalizing things. Friday is when everything is properly going to kick off, and as of when it does, there's so many matches. There's 9 matches, right? Like 5 teams will be eliminated on the Friday, and if you win, you make it all the way through to the Saturday guarantee. But if you lose, you have to play at least once, if not potentially twice again later that day. So it's going to be hectic for sure for some of these teams. And Dashy's looking at the bracket and saying, you know what, these first round games are actually more interesting than you might expect on paper. And especially one specific series with FaZe that could well turn the heads.
Oh yeah, let's have a look at this. I've seen it already, but yeah, Heretics Rocker. This is actually a good map. Winners background 1, I think at least.
Yeah, my headset's not working.
Yeah?
Yeah, maybe.
Wow, James just walked by us, guys, and he just looks absolutely jacked.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's flexing on us. I think he had buys today.
You Gucci?
Yeah, I'm good. He said chest.
And the LA Thieves Surge, that's actually good.
I feel like all these matches are good. Even the C9 FaZe one's kind of underrated because C9 didn't FaZe.
Didn't C9 beat him the stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
we had 4 good matches.
And then us and Ultra, we play each other once again. And then you have Boston and losers, Falcon losers, LAG and losers, and then Ravens and losers. Did anything like the last weekend of matches, would they have changed anything? Like any of these losers guys going to winners?
If we what?
If like that makes sense, Riley? Like if anyone won the last day, like would they have made Ravens or anyone else to go and win?
Maybe LAG.
I think we were just DMing each other, and then I was just like, we were like trolling. Basically, we were saying like, "Yo, let's play in this lobby undercover." You know what I mean? And then we were like, "Bet." And then I didn't think like, if there was a way to do it, maybe it was going to be a fresh account. It was going to be like a newcomer. But then he actually had the smart idea of me playing on one of his boys' accounts that's just always in the Discord, so it's just more believable. So then Twisty's just always in there. He's always talking to them. He's always in the calls. Like, and he actually plays, and he's pretty decent. You know what I mean? So it's pretty, at least believable in that way. So then I signed into his account, but had him call out in the other call while somebody else was giving me comms from their team. It was so terrible. We had 4 guys in it. It was me, Vals, a guy named obviously Twisty, and then a guy named Chandler. He was the audio guy for me. He was the EMAC Greg. He was giving me comms. He was like, "Okay, you're good to go." Like, you know what I mean? And then I hear the team's comms, and I could also hear Twisty saying, "I'm running these guys all this shit," and I'm just the one playing. You know what I mean? So then I just signed into his account.
That's like what Kyler did.
Were you like laughing? I would be laughing.
Bro, I was laughing because
he'd be like, "Shit on."
Yeah, because Twisty was also saying shit that I was thinking. Like, let's say if I was playing and I was getting bad time because I'm like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, you could tell by POV. I'm like, "What is this guy doing?" And then Twisty's like, "Bro, this guy took 3 years to peak." Like, and I was like, because I'm thinking in my head too. Like, so I was like, "Damn, we're actually all good as fuck on this."
So one of the things to keep in mind for the first round of this bracket is that for some teams, there is still very much a dream alive of making it to the World Championship, right? I guess before we look back at these qualifiers, I'll just show you guys the standings again real quick, because this is how it stands. OpTic at 175. If they were to come second at the tournament, they'd get 75 points and put themselves at 250. So, you know, even with seconds, they could make a serious jump, but of course, that's even with second, like it's easy. Certainly not easy. Rocker and Cloud9, though, are still potentially in the fight. If Cloud9 get third, that's 60 points. That would put them at 185. If Minnesota Rocker get fourth, that's 45 points. That would put them at 170. That isn't, you know, no, put them at 180, right? Do the maths right. So that could be enough if OpTic were to bomb out. So if OpTic were to get double rounded, then Rocker or Cloud9, realistically, if OpTic win a match, like just anything, it's almost impossible for anyone to do anything. But if OpTic were to get double rounded, it's not impossible that Rocker and Cloud9 could do something. So, look, their first round, they will be highly motivated. If OpTic win their first round, by the way, then it is chalked, obviously, because OpTic are guaranteed top 6, that's guaranteed 30 points, like, there's just no way. So, but it is true that C9 and Rocker will be coming in still with some hope and some optimism that maybe they could do it. Maybe they could make the run, because you know, all you need is 2 series wins. I'm not saying it's easy, and I think it's very, very unlikely. But if Rocker win 2 series, they beat Heretics, they beat Thieves or Surge, that's top 3, that's guaranteed 60 points, right? So, you know, 2 series wins gets you 60 points, starting from winners. And yeah, it's very, very unlikely. Obviously, the chances are probably like 5%, but you know, maybe less. But still, like Cloud9, they beat FaZe in that online match this stage. This was on the 9th of May, not long ago, and Cloud9 took down FaZe 3-1. This, of course, was kind of at the height of FaZe's problems with their hardpoint. Since then, over the last couple of weeks, it's got a little bit better. But still, FaZe lost online at that point. Would they lose again? Very unlikely, but I think Dashy is kind of fair to say, you know what, that series actually is more interesting than you might think, because Cloud9 did get the win just a couple of weeks ago and will be very, very motivated. I mean, obviously, FaZe are also going to be motivated. I don't really, this whole like, oh, Rocker are going to be going hard, right? But it's like, everyone's going hard, so you're trying to win the event. But still, I think you know what I mean. But the bracket is just so difficult for these teams that it's tough to say. But I do think that on some level, every single one of those first round games is exciting because OpTic Ultra and Thieves Surge are both bangers. And then the other two games that you'd think would be more clear cut, they've got teams that have still so much to play for, right? So I don't think you could really have designed a better and more interesting first round game. But even if OpTic do lose and it becomes a bit sketchy, they then play Ravens, so they should get a win on the board there. And if they do get a win on the board there, then, you know, it makes it very, very challenging for anyone else to make it deep in the tournament. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.